Hey, I want to take a moment today to talk about the phenomenon that a lot of people are calling the Trump slump. Now, people are using the term Trump slump to describe this decline in gun sales that we're seeing in this country at the moment. Gun sales are down quite a bit. Now, a lot of people are saying that the fact that gun sales are down is showing that the Second Amendment or the pro-Second Amendment movement is losing a lot of steam, that people just aren't as interested in self-defense as they were a few years ago, and those people are totally wrong. That's just a garbage idea. Now, on the other side, there's some people saying that the Trump slump isn't happening at all. In fact, I just read an article on Truth About Guns, which kind of made me sad because it showed like a third grader understanding of mathematics, where they said, gun sales aren't down at all this year because, February sales were up from January and March sales were up from February. Well, that's normal. That's a normal yearly progression. You don't measure economic trends by saying, what happened last week. You take a specific time period and then you compare that time period to a set standardized period in the past, and then you determine if things are up or down, and they're greatly down since this time last year. They're down 15 to 20%. Now, if you ask me, that's not very bad. That's actually pretty good. And I'll tell you why. Because under the Obama administration, gun sales skyrocketed at an abnormal rate, a rate that really couldn't be described by normal market conditions. People were panic buying, people were buying in protest, people were worried they weren't going to be able to get things a year from now, so people were buying like crazy. And the gun manufacturers, they actually started producing more to keep up with that demand. So now the fact that we're seeing a decline isn't a lack of interest, or it isn't a loss of momentum. It's just the market stabilizing. Because, like I said, Obama was the greatest gun salesman in history. Maybe Clinton might be as good as him, either one of the Clintons, but they're, pretty good gun salesmen. So it went really high. Now it's leveling off. That's all we're seeing. We're just seeing it level off. Now, these are all numbers based on NICS checks. Now, if gun sales had stayed level, NICS checks should have ticked up a little bit because a lot of states now require NICS checks for private sales, which didn't before. So even if gun sales had stayed flat, NICS should have went up a little bit. But like I said, NICS is down 15 to 20% from last year. But it's not a reason to panic. And it's not a reason to say, aha, see, we told you people would lose interest in guns. People don't care about guns. People still care. The market is still very high. In fact, I would have expected to see at least a 30% drop from the panic buying situations of the Obama administration and of the possible Clinton administration that people were worried about. After that, I would have expected to see a much sharper drop in numbers of sales. We haven't seen that. We're seeing, like I said, 15 to 20%. So gun sales are down, but it's normal. It's the market going back to where it should be. In fact, it's a little higher than where I think it should be. So I think people are still more interested than ever in firearms. It's just that we don't have that giant artificial jump. Panic buying is not a standard part of a normal market. It's an aberration. It's an anomaly. So that shouldn't even be factored in most of the time. They should factor that out when they're comparing this year's numbers to last year's numbers. And if you factor out the panic buying, things like that, the anomalies, the numbers from last year would be lower than the numbers from this year. So we still have gun sales going up at a good, normal pace. We just don't have the panic buying that we had. And it's not just panic buying. Some people, they only have so much money a year to spend, and a lot of times they'll spend it over the course of a year or two. A lot of those people took their whole year's budget and spent it in one day because they were afraid they weren't going to get things later. So all that stuff is those are outlier numbers, and they should be factored in when you decide to compare this year's market to last year's market. But the people that want to say this is a doomsday call for the gun industry, they're failing to do that. And people that want to say this isn't happening at all, well, they're being ignorant too, because it is happening. Gun sales are down, NICS checks are down. So if you want to help gun sales, go buy a gun. If you've got the money and you can afford one, go buy one. I always encourage that anyway. But if you're someone who's gloating saying gun sales are going down and people are losing interest, that's just not true. That's just bad math on your part. It's just being dishonest. So if you're someone who wants to buy a gun, go buy one because the market can always use your help. But if you're someone who's worried now that we're in some sort of trouble or the gun manufacturers are in some sort of trouble, they're not. The industry is still healthy. Sales, normal sales, are still going up, and we made it through a big panic time without losing anything. In fact, the gun manufacturers had a little boom there. They made a little extra money, so they should be able to do business fine from here on out. A little bit of a loss after that period is normal. I think you'll see things go right back up if anything happens that Trump gets in trouble or come next election. So the gun industry is strong. The Trump slump does exist, but it's nothing that isn't normal, and it's nothing you should worry about.